Hari Om. We are currently discussing the requirement engineering of module 2 in software engineering. We have already discussed what is requirement engineering, what are the 4 steps involved in requirement engineering, out of which we have completed requirement elicitation process, and we are currently discussing requirement engineering. In yesterday's session, we have discussed what is requirement analysis, how it is very essential, and what we do in the requirement analysis, and how it improves the understandability of the system, etc. When you see the requirement analysis, the analysis process starts with domain understanding. Then you go for collecting the requirements. Once the requirements are collected, the requirements will be classified or categorized. Then if there is any inconsistencies or conflicts arising in the requirement specification, that must be resolved. All the requirements must be then prioritized. Then we go for validating the requirements. If the customer is not satisfied, you go back again for domain understanding and repeat the process. If the validation is completed and the customer is satisfied, we can go for defining and specifying all the requirements for the next phase of software development life cycle. This is a simple diagram that specifies how the requirement analysis or requirement engineering process in general can be carried out. We have seen 4 different steps in requirement analysis. Drawing the context diagram as the first step, and the second step is developing the prototype, which is optional, and modeling all the requirements. Then you go for finalizing the requirements, out of which yesterday we have discussed what is a context diagram. This is a sample context diagram we have discussed yesterday, which is also called as level 0 data flow diagram. Then we have started with data flow diagram. What is data flow diagram we have discussed. So the data flow diagram generally describes the flow of data in the system. So it will be depicting what is the incoming data, what is the outgoing data, and what is the stored data. So data flow diagram does not mention anything about how data flows, but it shows what are the different functions available and how these functions transforms the inputs into the desired outputs. We have also seen a difference between data flow diagram and flow chart. We are already familiar with flowcharts for all the programming languages. Before writing a program, we used to draw a flowchart which describes the logical functions of the program. Whereas when you see a data flow diagram, it is depicting how the data flows in the system in different levels, and it will not contain any control or branching elements. Whereas your flow chart will depict the flow of execution control in the program module. So this is just to understand data flow diagram should not be confused with the flow chart. Most of the time the notations that are used in data flow diagram like rectangle, arrow marks, etc., we may get confused, like all these symbols are used in flowcharts also. So don't be carried away by the symbols that are used in data flow diagram. It is totally different. Flowchart depicts the execution flow whereas data flow diagram depicts the data flow. We have seen an example DFD, how and all these process, what is the input for each and every process or each and every function also we have seen, and from where the input comes, where the output goes, what is the input going in, what is the output coming out from each and every process. All these things we discussed in the previous video. And these are the symbols used in our data flow diagram. So the entities will be represented using rectangle, and the process is represented as a circle, and the data store can be represented like this or like this, and the data flow obviously using the arrow marks. And these are the definitions we have seen yesterday. What is a process? A process can be an activity or a function that is performed for some specific reason. It can be a manual or it can be a computerized process. Ultimately, each process should perform only one activity. That is what the process is all about. So the process depicts what is the function to be carried out for a specific reason. Then the data flow, it is going to be a single piece of data or a logical collection of information like a bill. Say for example, this is a single piece of information, employee ID, whereas total pay or net pay will be a logical collection of the data. And data store, it is collection of data that is permanently stored. Say for example, the tax rates is a data store. So this is a permanently stored information for doing this particular process. Then the external entity, it can be a person or it can be an organization or it can be some other subsystems that is external to the system, but it is interacting with the system. So this also we have seen. Say for example, here the worker is one kind of entity which is interacting with the system. Or for deduct taxes, overtime pay is one process which is interacting with this particular process. So like that, you can have external entities which will be interacting with the system to complete a task in that particular system. Your data flow diagrams are also known as data flow graph, or it is called as bubble chart. Now some of the observations of the data flow diagram, you could see all the names should be unique in the data flow diagram. Say for example, all the names here for the process, for the entities, for the information, etc., it is all unique. You cannot have the same process name here as well as here. The process names, everything must be unique. So all the names that are used in data flow diagram should be unique, and the arrows represent flow of data, and DFT does not imply any order of events. It is not going to specify whether this is the first process, this is the second process, etc., or this is the first data that should come in, this is the second data that should come in. That order of events is not specified. Order of the process is not specified. It is just simply specifying how the data flow for each and every process. For each and every function, what is the input, for what is the output, from where input comes and to where the output goes. That is what is represented in data flow diagram. And here logical decisions are not represented. Logical decisions are not represented. Please correct it here. Logical decisions are not represented in data flow diagram. It is, please do the correction here. Logical decisions will not be represented in data flow diagram. Please correct it here. The logical decisions are not represented in the data flow diagrams. No decision making process is shown in the data flow diagram. And in data flow diagram, too much of detailing should not be given in the data flow diagram. that you can do in the design process. All the low level designing can be done, but here data flow diagrams are used only for requirement analysis. So what you have to do, you need not give too much of detailing. Once the requirements are properly understood based on the domain, that is more than enough. So too much of detailing is not required. Now the next very important thing that we should understand in data flow diagram is leveling the data flow diagram. Why we need to level the data flow diagram? I will show you an example, then we will come back to these points. This is a data flow diagram. I am going to call it as level 1. Level 0, we have already seen, it is a context flow diagram that depicts the entire system, which is level 0. So from level 0, you can decompose the system into smaller problems and you can identify the functions required for each and every user. Say for example, if your level 0 diagram is decomposed, let us assume I am going to get two different processes for the administrator. For the administrator, I am getting two different processes. Now, what is the first process? Managing the staff details, for which the staff data will be retrieved and stored in this particular data store. In the same way, for managing the stock, there is a data store called stock, which will be used for retrieving and storing the data. So administrator will give some stock details for managing it. That will be the input and it will be stored and retrieved in the stock. The same way, for managing the staff details, administrator will provide the staff information which will be stored and retrieved in the staff data store. This is level 1. So assume that two processes which are numbered as 1 and 2 in level 1. Now when I see this managing staff details, I may be having sub processes like adding the staff details or updating the staff details or generating the reports of the staff available in the organization. If this is the case, what I have to do, the process can be decomposed further into sub process. So I will be taking the sub process into the next level. In the same way, when you are going to manage the stock, you may be managing the stock level. You will be setting the stock level. That can be one sub process. Another sub process can be placing the order for each and every stocks. When they are reaching the particular level, what you are going to do, you place an order. So that can be another sub process, or generating monthly reports of the stock can be another sub process. So what I am going to do, when a process can be decomposed into sub process, I will be taking it to the next level. So in level 1, I have these two processes which can be further divided into sub processes. I am going to take them to level 2. Now when you see here, I have given manage staff details as number 1 process. When I take it to the next level, the number 1 is divided into 3 different sub processes. So I have numbered it as 1.1, 1.2 and 1.3. That means in the previous level, process 1 is further decomposed into 1, 2, 3. The same way, in the previous level, process 2 is now divided into 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3. This is how the numbering of process in different levels will be done. So what you have done here, managing staff details is having 3 sub process. 1.1 will be adding the staff details, 1.2 updating it, 1.3 generating the report. In the same way, managing stock level is process 2, which is decomposed into 3 sub-process 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3. You can set the stock levels in 2.1, placing the order and generating the report. Now all these 3 processes will be retrieving the data in staff data store, and all these 3 processes will be retrieving the data in the stock data store. Again, if you want to further decompose it into sub-process, suppose say for example setting the stock levels you want to further decompose, or updating the staff details you want to further decompose. How do you want to decompose it? This 1.2 you want to decompose into deleting staff details, modifying staff details. So what you will be having? 1.2.1 will be deleting staff details, 1.2.2 will be modifying staff details, which you will take to level 3. Like that, until you get a smaller unit, you can start decomposing the processes to analyze all the requirements of the system. This is what you call as leveling of data flow diagram. So going back to these points, data flow diagram represent a system or software at any level of abstraction. Many systems are too large for a single data flow diagram to describe the data processing clearly. So at level 0, your DFD is called as fundamental system model or context model, that represents the entire software element as a single bubble with input and output data indicating by incoming and outgoing arrows. Sometimes it is necessary that some decomposition and abstraction mechanism be used for such systems. So what you are going to do? DFDs will be hierarchically organized, which helps in progressively partitioning, which we call as decomposing into smaller units, partitioning and analyzing large systems. These kind of DFDs are called as leveled DFD. They are called as leveled DFD. So you are going to hierarchically organize it by partitioning and analyzing the large systems, so that if decomposition is required, you take it to the next level. So collecting all these different levels of DFDs is called as leveled data flow diagram. We have seen this example how leveling can be done. So that's what you have to understand in data flow diagram. Now another notation that is used in requirement analysis, we have seen in the requirement analysis, drawing context diagram is the first step. Prototyping is an optional where you can create some models for your system. Then the third step is modeling the requirements. The modeling the requirements will give you different graphical representations, and we have seen data flow diagram. Apart from that, entity relationship diagram can also be done. Data dictionary can also be used for modeling the requirements, or sometimes state transition diagrams will also be used. So out of which data flow diagram we have discussed? Entity relationship diagram you might have already discussed in your third semester database management systems. Whatever you have studied in the ER diagram there in DBMS, it all comes under the software engineering concept also for modeling the requirements. Then now we are going to talk about what is a data dictionary. What is the purpose of data dictionary? So your data dictionaries, the data flow diagrams sometimes will become more complex. You have lots of leveling, lots of processes available, etc. To manage this complexity, what we are going to do, we are going to augment the data flow diagram with data dictionaries. So you are going to give data dictionary as a support mechanism for the complex data flow diagrams. It is just used to support the detailing of data flow diagram. That's it. So data dictionaries are just the repositories to store information about all the data items that are defined in the data flow diagram. So it is just describing the data items that are available in DFD. So your data dictionary will contain name of the data item, and if your data item is having any aliases, that can also be specified, and it will be describing each and every data item. What is the data item? What is the purpose of that particular data item? Then what are the related data items available? If you have any range of values being specified, that can also be specified in the data dictionary. Say for example, if you are going to have a unit test, sometimes you may be having unit test as one of the data item. By the time the range of values can be specified. What can be the range of values? For unit test, the minimum test mark must be 8. In the unit test, to get a pass percentage, minimum you must get 8 and the maximum is 20. Like that, if you have any range of values, that can also be specified. And what is the data flow? That should also be specified. And if you have any data structures, that can also be defined in the data dictionary. So all the data items, and for each data item, if you have defined any aliases, that should also be specified, and describing the data items or what is the purpose of that particular data item in the DFD, and any other data items that are related, and what are the different range of values used for that particular data item, if any, and the data flows and the structure used in the DFD. So all these things will be specified in data dictionary. All these detailing cannot be specified in your DFD. So what you are going to do? All this detailing can be given in your data dictionary. And these are some of the notations used in the data dictionary. So in the data dictionary, if you have a notation like this, it specifies data elements A and B are available in X. If you have a notation like this, X consists of either A or B. Like that, these notations can also be used. Or suppose if you have a notation like this, it says X consists of an optional data element A. So A may be available in X or it may not be available in X. If you have a notation like this, it says X consists of Y or more occurrences of A. A is given in curly braces. This is occurring in X, but it may occur minimum Y times, but maximum it can be anything. If I have this notation, it says it can have occurrences of A lesser than Z. X consists of Z or fewer occurrences of A. That means maximum it can have Z occurrences of A. If I have given like this, X can have minimum Y occurrences of A or maximum Z occurrences of A. These are some of the notations that will be generally used in the data dictionary. So all these information in the data dictionary is specifically used to describe the data items that are specified in data flow diagrams. So your data dictionary, as per Agarwal's textbook, the data dictionary can be used to create an ordered listing of all data items. It can be used to create an ordered listing of a subset of data items also, or it can also be used to find a data item name from a description. It can also be used to design the software and test cases. These are the purposes of data dictionary. I think with that we are completing requirement analysis. Requirement elicitation we have already completed, and with the discussion of data dictionary we are completing the requirement analysis. So this slide just shows you what are the approaches that you can use for any problem analysis. For the problem analysis, this is an informal method. What you are going to do, you just list all the inputs, outputs and the functions that are available in the problem. You list the functions and then list all inputs and outputs associated with each and every function. This is another way. Or you can go for a structured requirement definition. Define user level DFD and record all the inputs and outputs for each and every individual. Then you define the combined user level DFD. Then you define the application level. Then you go for defining application level functions also. So this is just to show you that when you analyze a problem, what are the different approaches that can be done. So this is the kind of approach we are going to use for our requirement analysis also. So whatever we have discussed so far in requirement analysis, it is based on any of these three approaches for the analysis. This is just for your information. We will be discussing requirements documentation in our next video. Thank you.